So we are on the bottom of 42b, and we mentioned that seemingly in our Mishnah there are these 18 trephos, 18 animals, 18 different wounds, punctures that render an animal invalid. So the question though was that we had at least 11 cases that were not accounted for. So the question is, what do you do with that? So we said, well, the punctures were, there's 8 of them that were punctures, and you can categorize them all under one category of a puncture, and therefore you leave room for 7, and therefore these 7 that were just mentioned for the second half of the page could be counted as part of the 18. So to that we're up to that we say, well, if that's true, so psukeinami trehave chashvinu b'chad and batzalu chada, that there's cords that are severed, both the spinal cord and the trachea are both cords that are severed. So both of those you should also, when you categorize it as one, and then you have one extra, and then you only have 17, not 18. The Ode, the Rav Avira Mishmei the Rabba, Nami Nekuvahi. And also earlier we had an opinion of Rav Avira in the name of Rava that said that if the spleen was punctured, that's also a treifa. So that should have also been under the category of nekuva, and yet it wasn't. And if it was under that punctured category, so then that would leave us with only 16 treifas, leaving 2 extra. So what do you have to say next page? Elahanach tarti de afakto lo tafik. In the beginning of the page of 42b, we asked 2 questions from 2 other places, and we asked the case from an animal its leg was cut, and we said, yeah, we go like Rosh Shimon Elazar, that said it could still live. So now we're saying don't do that. Keep that as one of the cases, and also the gluda. The gluda was a flayed animal. So both the flayed animal and the one that's leg was severed, we asked the question from, and we ended up saying that we go like a different opinion. But now that you're down to 16 based off these questions, so add those two back in. And basically Rashi says that any other animals we're going to find in the chapter that weren't in this list, you're going to have to subcategorize them under one of these categories to not have this problem of being more or less than 18. Okay. Amar Ula. So says Ula, Shmona mine trefos namrlo Moshe b'Sinai. 8 kinds of trefos were said to Moshe at Sinai, and they are nekuva, a puncture. So I mean, he's not disagreeing that there were 18. He's just saying that they were categorized in these 8 categories. Nekuva, it's punctured. Psuka is a cord is severed. Netula, it's removed. Chasura, it's missing. Krua, it's torn. Trusa, it's all clawed. Nefula, it fell. Shvura is broken. So that's all coming. La'afuke, la'kusa, derachish bar papa. La'kusa is disease. Oh yes, thank you. La'kusa, right? It was stricken with a disease. So according to Rachish bar papa, that is another category. Ula argues. Now, Amar Chia bar Rava, Shmona trefos yesh, v'nekuva. If earlier you told me that there's 8 trefos under the category of something punctured, and there's 8 of them, so im tomar teisha, because of the mara. What about the gallbladder? The gallbladder being punctured would be a 9th punctured example of something which is punctured. which is a treifa. So, and yet it sounds like we don't say that. So we say Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Katanila. This is the opinion of Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya Nikva Hakeva, Nikvu Hadakim Treifa. So Nikvu Hakeva. So the cave is one of the stomachs. What do you say? The Abamesum. Okay. Yeah, the Abamesum. Now it has these dakim, these very thin. Let's see if they have it here. Yeah. Let's go to the picture. No. No, I don't have. You don't have a picture. Do you have a picture? No. Yeah, it's either or. Either the abomesum, or part of the stomach, was punctured, or if the intestines were punctured, so then that's going to be a treifa. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Omar Av Nikvamar, and even the gallbladder. So you see, there's two opinions if a punctured gallbladder qualifies as a treifa or not. Our punctures only have 8 of them, not including the gallbladder, because we disagree with Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, now we're just going to list a number of halachos. Hilchos Chaver, Kezayis, Marav, Kurkaban, Simon. So, Amar of Yitzchak Bar Yosef, in the name of Rabbi Amar of Yochanan, in the name of Yochanan. Halacha, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Oh, he holds halacha as like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda that a punctured gallbladder is considered a treifa. It will be considered a treifa. Yeah. The Amar of Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar of Yochanan. So, Maya Hajule Chavre Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. This Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda that says the gallbladder being punctured is going to be a treifa, and the Chacham argue on him. We're going to bring now Sukkim from Eov that we're going to show you that he had this punctured gallbladder, and yet he survived. So you see that it's not a treifa. So Maya Hajule Chavre Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So they're going to say that it says in Eov Yishmoch La'aretz Mararti. He had this issue, and yet he still lived. So what do you see? It's not a treifa. To that we say, no. Eov that was a miraculous case. Amar Lahem, Ein Maskirin Maisanisim. You can't mention miraculous survival to bring a proof if it's a treifa or not. And I'll prove to you, because there's another part of Eov where his kidneys were split, and yet he survived. So clearly, he's working on miraculous scales over here. So the Elotem Hachi, so it says in Eov, it says Yifalik Velo Yachmol, that is close, the kidneys were split. Velo Yachmol, you're not gonna have mercy. So Mika Chaye, so how can you live with split kidneys? Ella Nisa Shiny. It must be that it was miraculous. Dichsiv, as it says also in Eov, it says Rakis Nafsho Shomer. Or really, it's Ach, not Rak. Ach is Nav Shomer. He said, Ach is Nafsho Shomer, that he's guarding his life, meaning talking to the Malach, Rashi points out the Malach HaMaves, and he was told to strike him, but to guard his life. So, yeah. So you see that the Malach HaMaves, the angel of death, was told, strike him, but guard his life. That's what he did. So you can't bring up proof from Eov, from Eov to our case. Hachanami needs a shiny. Just like the kidneys being split was miraculous. So you can apply it over here. You can apply it over here. Now it doesn't say it by the gallbladder that we're adding in, but we're applying what happened by the kidneys to over here and saying it was miraculous. So that's what the rabbis would answer back to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that a gallbladder is a treifa. Okay. The Amar of Yitzchak, Rabbi Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha K'divrei Omer Kezayis. So this is going back to another case in our Mishnah where it says, or there's actually two opinions about it later on, but it's the case where the liver was removed. It says, Nitila kavid v'lo nishtar mimenu klum. So there's a contradiction later on of how much of the liver has to be removed for it to be considered a treifa. So, for example, our Mishnah says that if it was taken and nothing remained from it, then it's a treifa. But if something remained, even if the something is not the size of a kizayis, it'll still be kosher. That's our Mishnah. But later it says, if a liver was taken and there was remaining a kizayis, then it's not a treifa. But sounds like if it was less than that, then it would be a treifa. So we said the Gemara is going to say later on, it's actually a machlokas tanayim. It's actually there's a varying opinions about this. So we're saying that Rabbi Yochanan holds halacha kedivrei omer kizayis, like that Mishnah really later on that says if the liver was removed, but a kizayis remains, it's not a treifa. If less than a kizayis remains, but something is still there, it would be a treifa. So now we're asking, Umiyamar Rabbi Yochanan Hakiv Amar Rabbi Barchana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Halacha Gestam Mishnah V'Tnan Nitla Kavel Nishtar Hanemen Klum but Hanishtar Sheira Afkav Lav Gezayis. Our Mishnah, we said that you said in Rabbi Yochanan's name that it needs a kizayis or else it's a treifa. But our Mishnah says if nothing remains, it's a treifa. If something remains, which is not a kizayis, it won't be a treifa. And Rabbi Yochanan says halacha is always like a stam Mishnah, an anonymous Mishnah, and that's our Mishnah. So you put two and two together, Rabbi Yochanan has to go like our Mishnah, which is an anonymous Mishnah, which says that as long as something from the liver remains, it will not be a treifa. And that flies in the face of what we just said from Rav Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So a contradiction in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. What does Rabbi Yochanan hold? Answer is Amarayininu Bali Rabbi Yochanan. There's a debate what Rabbi Yochanan holds. There's a debate. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef says that he needs a kizayis, and Rabbi Barchana says he does not need a kizayis. So two opinions in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, next halacha from Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef. We're going to have 4 halachas from him. Yeah. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Mara, the gallbladder shenikva, that is punctured, the kaved, so masak shera, a gallbladder that's punctured and a liver that's covered. The part that's covered over is the part where the liver attaches. If there's a hole there, let's see, do they have it over here? Nope. 43A. Yeah. Here's the kaved. The kaved's over here. The gallbladder's over here. I think there's an area. Oh, see above. Okay, we don't know if see above. But there's an area next to the liver that if it has a hole in it, but it gets covered over. Let's see.
It's covered by the liver.
What is that?
It looks like the liver rests against it.
The liver seals it, yeah. So Mara Shanikov, a kaved also kshever, right? Sorry. It's one case. That if the gallbladder is punctured, but the liver seals it, so meaning the hole happens, so the gallbladder is under the liver, but if there's a part where they meet, so there's a hole right at the end of the liver, but the gallbladder could cover it over, so then that's going to be kosher and not a treifa. So even Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that a punctured gallbladder is a problem, but not where it overlaps, not if it's sealed over by the liver. Yeah. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan Nikva HaKurkaban the Kis Shalokayim Sheira. So the Kurkaban they translate as the gizzard. So with the adjacent section of the digestive tract. So if it's sliced in half to expose the kiss is the yellow inner membrane. So Yeah, so you have this korkaban, which is the gizzard. I think we're talking about the stomachs over here, right? Yeah. So, and inside is the kiss. Really, kiss means a pocket, but in this case, it's a yellow inner membrane. So, so now if Ni gave a korkaban, but the membrane remains intact, kosher. So the korkaban is really, I think, the outside, and the kiss is the inside. So if the outside is punctured, but the inside remains intact, then you're good to go. But let's say the other way, the membrane is punctured, but the korkaban mai, what's the korkaban kayim mai? But the outer layer, the gizzard, that remains intact. So what's the halacha? Tashma damar of Nachman nikim zeh below zeh kosher. If one of them gets punctured without the other, it's valid. If it punctures through both of them, then it'll be a problem. But one or the other, that is still going to be kosher. Presumably, it's not enough of a puncture or big enough of a puncture. Yeah. Okay. Now, Amar Rava Shnei Oros Yesh Lo Levesh. So the esophagus has two layers: the outer layer and the inner layer. The outer layer is red, and the inner layer is gonna be white. So the question is going to be, I think, similar. What if one gets punctured, but not the other? Oh my! Well. Yeah. This is the white. This is the inner layer. And then the outer layer is, yeah. Oh, here they also have it. Yeah. Okay. So, what happens if, Adam, Chitzon Adam, Panimi Lavan. The outer one is red, the inner one is white. Nikev Zeblo Zeh, kosher. One gets punctured, not the other, kosher. So, that's the halacha. Well, just say that. Why are you telling me what colors it is? Why is that relevant, red and white? So, Lama li lemeimar chitzon adamu pnimi lavan. So we say the chalif treifa. The chalif treifa, that I think it means that if the white one starts becoming red, then it's going to be a problem. So you have to know what its natural color is.
Yes, the colors are reversed. Yes, the inside is.
So if the inside becomes red or the outside becomes white, so then it's going to be a problem. You have the reverse. Good. Yeah. Right. It's not discoloration, it's actually a problem. Like the inside got flipped over to the outside or something like that. So it's not just that the red became white, maybe because of some kind of disease or something like that. That's a debate if a disease is considered treifa, but it sounds like they actually got it inversed on some level, and that's going to be a problem. Okay. Ibailahu. Nikvu shnehem zeh shelo kineged zeh mahu. So here you have that there's a puncture on the inner part of the esophagus. Yeah. If there's a puncture on the inner part and on the outer part, but they don't align together. So, one's at one point, the one's at the other point. So is that rendered a treifa or not? Mahu. Amar marzutra mishmedra papa bevesht kosher. By the esophagus, that's fine. That's kosher, not a treifa. But bekurkaban puzzle. But by the kurkaban, that's going to be invalid. Now, Rashi says that by the kurkaban, by the stomach, that since a lot of food gathers there, it expands. So if you have a puncture at different parts of the kurkaban, so because there's food stuck there, or not stuck there, but the food gathers there, and then it has to get out, so it expands, so it's going to pushing through, it's going to end up pushing through both holes, and it's going to puncture them. So Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it keeps pushing through. So, but in terms of the esophagus, that's not what happens. In terms of the esophagus, the food can just pass through without having to collect there, and therefore it's not going to, unless two holes are aligned, the food's not going to escape through the holes. It'll just keep traveling. So, on clothing, you have an inner layer and an outer layer.
Uh-huh.
So once you have a hole on both layers, then your skin is visible. That's a problem. But if you have only a hole on the inner layer and on the inner layer, so to here, if the food's not going to get out of the esophagus, then you're good to go, as opposed to the korban. Okay, so that's that. Now, Maskef Rav Ashi has the opposite logic. Adarabba, Vesh the Achla Bey Upaya Bey. So, Revach. Yeah, so Rav Ashi says that the esophagus where there's food, upaya. So I think one explanation of paya means and it's breathing, and it breathes, it bellows. There's two interpretations, either it breathes or it bellows. So, so since that happens, it's impossible that's not going to expand. For sure, it's going to expand. So therefore, it'll expand. So, gam delay, upash delay. And zimnin demahad nozin behade hadadi, it's going to expand, and therefore it's gonna stretch because you're breathing or it's bellowing, and then they're gonna end up touching each other, and therefore it's gonna be a problem. But korban stays still, just the stomach just collects the food. The meinach nayich, so kidikakai, like it stands, it's not going anywhere. So I'm really Rav Acha, brother of Yosef, Rav Ashi. He says to Rav Ashi in the name of Yosef, you should know that they said the name of Mar Zutra in the name of Rav Papa, like you said, and you're right. And therefore, really, two holes that are not aligned by the esophagus will be a problem, but by the korban will not be a problem. The Amar Rabbah, Krom Sha'ala Machmas Maka, the Vesht Eino Krom. So a chrome is like a little scab that came upon the on the esophagus. Ano chrome means and therefore is dangerous. Therefore, where's our picture? This picture. What about this picture? Any picture here? No. It's not a proper scab.
It doesn't endure, so it comes.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So a scab on the esophagus is not a proper scab. There's like a whole to do over here, because. Yeah. Yeah. So Rashi, the way they bring it here nicely, is that why the sealing of the puncture does not render the animal kosher. So at some point he says the scab's going to be loose. That's one answer. So it's sealed, but it's still considered punctured. That's one. And or once it's punctured, and it's a treifa, really, you can't seal it up and untreifa it. Once it's invalid, it's invalid. You can't undo it. Fine. So that's exactly a debate what Rashi exactly holds, but either the scab's gonna get undone or it can't be untreifed. So V'amar Rabba vesht ein lo b'dikim mibachutz ela b'fnim. The esophagus, you cannot check it from the outside because it has an outer layer that's red. Now, Rashi says another interesting comment is that you can't notice red blood if the outer layer is red. Sounds like, according to Rashi, that if any red is found in the inner layer, which is white, but then it's gonna be a problem. So the place to check is the inner layer. Okay. L'may nafka mina, for what practical difference is this? So, all right, that's interesting because he just told us. Yeah, l'may nafka mina. So it sounds like there'll be blood. What's the problem? Yeah, you're checking. Of course, there's blood. No, but we need it for a case. Next page of a l'safek drusa. So a doubtful case of clawing. So you have the animal, and you have an animal there, and I don't know, whatever is a lion, and the lion's quiet, and the animal is howling away that it got injured. So you're not sure exactly how it happened, but it could be that it was punctured by this animal. So now, when the animal gets clawed, it's only going to be a problem once it gets reddened, once it gets red. So the only place you see the redness is going to be the inner layer of the esophagus. So that's why you have to know, and that's why you can only check in the inner layer, not the outer layer. Okay. Now, Safek Drusa the Asir the Kamei the Rabba. There was a case that came from a Rabba. Have Kabadik the Rabba Levesh Meavroi. So now this is going to be interesting. Yeah. So what happened was Safek Drusa the Asir the Kamei the Rabba. Have Kabadik the Rabba Levesh Meavroi. Rabba checked the esophagus from the outside. So now, 1 second. Rabbi just told me I have to check on the inside. Yeah, Abai is sitting there listening. Rabbi just finished giving shir. You must check when it comes to a doubtful case of a clawed animal, you must check on the inside of the esophagus, on the white, to see if there's any red, and not on the outside. And now that exact case came to him right after shir was over. And what did Rabbi do? Check the outside. So Abai is up in arms. So he said, "What do you mean? You just told me that there's no checking the esophagus from the outside, only the inside." So Rabba goes, "Afche Rabba ubatke v'ishtachech aleha trei kurte dama v'treifa." Rabba turned it over, meaning he went and looked on the inside of the esophagus, and he found trei kurte, two swells, right? Yeah, two. What's a better word? Not swell, but what? Just spots,
of red, yeah.
not swelling.
Not in the translation.
Oh, okay. Two spots of red. So, and he rendered it a treifa. So now 1 second. Why did Rabba?
The red spots is poison.
The red spot assumes that it's poison. Okay. The question is, why did Rabba do this? Why, right after he gave a shir about checking on the outside and the inside, did he check on the outside? He was a good teacher. You want to sharpen a Abai up. So if he checks the outside, you don't see was Abai really listening. So therefore, he checked the outside. Turned out Abai was listening and corrected him as if Rabba wanted, and therefore he went over and checked the inside, found two spots, and rendered it invalid. Now, what happens if you're going to find a thorn inside the esophagus? Does it have to puncture layer 1, layer 2? Does it matter if it ended up there or you put it there? Amar Ula, Yashav lo kotes bevesht, ein choshishin shema hivri. Now, this word hivri is going to cause a little trouble. But if you have a thorn inside the esophagus, ein choshishin shema hivri. Now, Rashi gives two explanations of what hivri means, and it sounds like it makes a lot of noise in the halacha world about this. So the first explanation is v'lo hivri means that it didn't heal. Can't find it. Yeah. So the case is you have a thorn on the inside and you don't see it from the outside. So we're not worried that maybe there's a puncture. Ein choshishin, that maybe there's a puncture and then it healed. We're not worried about that. And another explanation is hivri is we're not worried that maybe it sounds like it's still punctured. But let's go with the first one that it's healed. So if a thorn gets there in the inside, we're not worried about that. Really, it was punctured and healed. No. So now on this statement of Ula, we're going to ask a number of questions. Daras, Chatichos, Basakin, Tmei, Siman. Four questions that are going to ask. They're going to ask on this halacha of Ula. So Ula, according to Ula, Ma'ishna misafik drusa. What's the difference by a case of a suffix drusa, the one that we just said that you're not sure if it's clawed? That there we say, well, hold on. If you have a lion and you don't see any clawing, but you have an animal in pain, so now you're not sure. It sounds like the lion might have clawed the animal. So we have to check. So why not for Ula do you have to do a checking? If you have a thorn in the esophagus, so check. Why not check? So so that's one. Ma'ish nam esophagus drusa. So kasavar Ula ein chosh esophagus drusa. No, by a suffix drusa, we're not worried. You would not have to check. He argues, which is a machlokes later on, Rav and Shmuel. Do you have to check for this case or not? We'll see in 10 pages. So the answer is not. When you have two pieces, one achas shel chelev, the achas shel shuman, one of chelev and one of shuman. Now, what happens if you have just two pieces in front of you? So one is forbidden fat and one is permitted fat. Well, if you eat one of them and you still don't know what you did, you have to go bring an asham talui. You have to bring a korban for doubtfully eating something improper. So we see that when it's in a case of a doubt, the ramifications to that you should have abstained from it. So to here, you should at least check into it. How can you say definitively that nothing's wrong when there's a doubt that maybe it punctured the esophagus? Say very different. Hasam is chazik isura, a phrase that's used a lot. Is chazik isura means it's not a regular doubt because one of these cases is for sure invalid. The chelev is for sure invalid. When you have a case of chazik isura where you know that one is already the status quo is that one of these is prohibited, it's much less of a doubt and much more of a serious violation. What happens when you checked on a knife and you found afterwards that it's actually has a nick on it or something? So there you also have to check. So there it's also not exactly the same as our doubtful case because on the knife you have a nick. There's a nick on the knife. So there's already something that's throwing you off over here. Here we don't see any puncture. It's just a maybe. Maybe yeah, maybe not. But something actually happened to it. Having a thorn inside the esophagus is not an invalidation. So it's not the same as a knife that has a nick on it. Another doubtful case where you see that we're stringent and not lenient. When you have, right, the rule is that any doubt in terms of tuma and tahara, impurity, in a private domain is tameh. So there we're very strict. So what's the answer? So says the Gemara. First of all, it says, one sec. According to your reasoning, don't compare the thorn in the esophagus to a doubt in a private domain. Apply it to a public domain, which we say the rule is any doubt of tuma and tahara in a public domain is going to be pure, not impure. So, what are you going to tell me? The rule is when you have doubts in tuma and tahara in a private or public domain, in private it's impure, in public it's pure. Why? Because of a sota. A sota is a suffix she got warned not to, and yet still secluded herself with somebody. And it's a doubt. We don't know, did she commit relations with him or not? Halacha is we viewed her as impure until proven innocent. So we learn from there that suffix tuma bershus hayachid is tameh, and then the inverse of that is suffix tuma bershus harabim is tahor. So you can't bring that's a elahazim hilchas gemirila. That's a interesting. The words hilchas gemirila usually mean halacha Moshe Misinai, but in this case, I think it means that's a halacha that was taught. I mean, we have a pasuk like that. No, but actually, it might mean halacha Moshe Misinai. Yeah, yeah. It probably still means here. Halakha Moshe Messina. Yeah. It's based off of a verse. I'm not sure if it means Halakha Moshe Messina or it just means an exposition that we learned from Sota. That's probably the more accurate one. That it's exposition from Sota that we applied to other cases. Okay. Yosef Humerabanon, commander of Kahanav Yosef Kamar Nimtzeis Itmar Aval Yosef Chayshinan. Your case, Ula, was that you found the thorn in the esophagus. Aval Yosef, it sounds like, and therefore you have nothing to worry about. Aval Yosef Chayshinan sounds like if you put it there, now you have to worry. So Amar Lahurav Kahana Lo Tatzitule. Don't listen to him. Yosef Itmar Aval Nimtzeis. Lo Ishrichle Leula the Kulu Chivai Braisa Kotzi Achlan. Obviously, Ula was talking about a case where you put it there. It was placed there, not that it swallowed. It was found there, because animals are traveling all around. It's very common that they have thorns in their esophagus. There's no novelty in Ula teaching me that case, but to say that it was placed there now, how exactly was the thorn placed in the esophagus? Any ideas? How do you place the thorn in the esophagus? If you're going from the outside, it's for sure a problem. How would you place a thorn in the esophagus? If it was lodged in the esophagus, how do you do that? Oh, the thorn pierced both layers, and the outer one healed. Got it. So in the case that a person puts a thorn through both layers, the top layer heals. So that's where Ula said, still it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It'll still be fine as long as both of the layers are not punctured. Interesting. Okay, so now Itmar. Okay, a little more. Itmar Turvat Havesht. So Turvat Havesht is the what? Yeah. Wait, a picture. Where's the picture? Page 44. Oh, right here. Yeah. So basically, on top of the esophagus, Turbat Havesh is called the pharynx. Pharynx? Yeah, pharynx. Okay, Jacob agrees. Pharynx. He knows a thing or two about this part of the body. Do we have a pharynx too, or only animals? Yeah. I have a pharynx? If I want to call somebody a name, I can call them a pharynx? No. No, you don't do that? So, okay, so that's so the pharynx is it attaches to the small hyoid bone on the muscle of the mouth. It's basically the part that's above the esophagus, and we'll have to continue from here tomorrow. Okay. Jules flew to Baltimore for his grandson's wedding. Yeah. Wait, he got married twice for his grandson.